Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast. And today we have a longtime friend of mine, and it's kind of cool how this all happened. I got reconnected with this guy. His name's Danny Wright. And Danny, I think you're going to really catch a glimpse of this in the conversation, but he's just a really inspiring kind of guy. He brings an energy to the room, to the conversation. And I've always appreciated him. I've always loved the work we got to do together at one time in our lives. We were working on some different ministries together, but just I got caught up with him not too long ago. It was like, man, like Danny would be perfect for the Good News Podcast. So friends, sit back, fasten your seatbelts, get ready for quite a ride. This is a conversation that goes in a whole bunch of different places, but one that I hope, I know, I'm confident you'll find inspiring just as I did. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast. As I mentioned in the introduction, this is a very, very special friend of mine. We got a lot of history. We've had some good times. We've done a lot together, and I can't wait to have this. I think you're going to be really encouraged and inspired by this conversation. Danny, thanks so much for joining us on the Good News Podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Let's jump right in. And I'm not even sure. When I even think about describing you, there's words like inspiration and positivity and like you bring an energy into what you do and who you are in every room and conversation. And just kind of want to start there, like you know, and it might be hard to talk about yourself, so you might have to think back to what others have said about you.
No, how much time do we have?
Yeah, that's awesome. But just really love who you are, man.
Thank
and
you.
like, where does that come from? Then we'll get into some other things as we go along here.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's a couple things there. I obviously means the world to me that you would think that way of me. There's so many quotes pop into my head. You know, wherever you are, be in love. Whatever you're doing, you know, bring some passion and love to it. But I would say, where does that come from? I think ultimately my own path, you know, as a wayward son to some degree, you know, I got to a point where at one point in my life, period of darkness, where all I did was, you know, reach for some light, basically. And I feel that my life started to change for the better. And as a result, I recognized, I guess if I could use two words, be grace and gratitude. I recognize that God's grace is what saved me, you know, is what made the biggest difference in my life, what changed me, what's led to some transformation, even in just my outlook on life. And I guess that the gratitude as a result of that, that's how I start my days, Jamie. You know, when you've had a taste of, you know, what's behind door number 2, you know, as soon as my eyes open in the morning, first thing is thank you. You know, that's where I start.
Yeah. So the word transformation comes to mind, you know, as you're talking, that you mentioned wayward son, and that's a pretty significant term. Not to take you further into that than you want to go today, but just maybe a little bit on your story and what the before and after. And I know we're never done, so it's not like you're done here, but yeah, what that's looked like over the course of your life.
I like what you just said though about never being done, because that's true. I think that's one of the reasons why something I say often to remind myself as much as anything. No days off, you know, it's an inside job and no days off. There are a couple of my own little mantras, but yeah, a lifelong battle with addiction, alcoholism, mental health, and even my cancer journey. You know, there was lessons, certainly not wayward, my cancer journey, but the life that I had led, I guess, my struggles, my challenges, learning how to live through some of those difficulties and not just overcome, say, my addictions and some of those challenges, but to actually find some joy again. And as a result, I believe that helped lay the foundation for walking through some of the challenges that I experienced with cancer as well, and various other challenges in life, you know? I think because of that, I realized it's not because I'm a superstar that I've come through with some of those challenges with any kind of dignity or grace or any great wisdom. It's God's grace. Oh.
Now, grace. Yeah, let's kind of delve into that one a little bit, because that's such a beautiful word, but I think a word that people don't always understand. You know, like and I don't want to leave people not having an opportunity today to really understand what grace looks like. And so when you think about the way grace has been significant in your life, in your journey, how has that appeared? How has that been made real for you? This idea of grace, yeah,
It is
you know
so
what I mean? Because we
huge.
toss that word
Yeah,
out, right? And
sure. Yeah. And I guess to try to bring life to it
yeah,
for
yeah,
me
yeah, yeah.
anyway. Actually, I heard Bono, U2, talk about it. He said it's the universe's wild card, you know?
Nice.
So, I mean, it's God's wild card. It's
Mm,
like, I like the description, unearned or unmerited
mm,
reward.
mm-hmm,
You know, it's a gift. I mean, even when I think about it that way, it's a gift that I didn't earn, you
mm,
know, that was undeserved. And not beating myself up,
mm-hmm,
just
mm-hmm.
recognize my humanness, you
Yeah.
know, my imperfection, just like all of us, you know, all of us, that's our starting point. None of us are perfect. This whole idea, though, that I don't have to be perfect to be okay.
Mm,
Somewhere along there, I guess, you know, whatever end of the spectrum, if for me, if I'm drinking to feel okay in my skin or to quiet the noise between my ears,
mm-hmm,
you know, that stops serving me.
hmm,
And but I was unable to stop on my own because something, I guess, deeper within me said, when I'm struggling, oh, I know what'll make this feel better.
mm,
So that is how I experienced real life, God's grace, because in those moments I realized I can't
mm,
intellectually, I know what to do. I know how to address this. I've read about it, I've studied, I've done work on it. But yet, in that moment, it's like my hard wiring still says, you know what'll make you feel better today.
mm,
And in that moment, I guess, you know, at the end of the pier or at facing um, the reality that I was unable to help myself, that's when I reached out for God. And it was I don't know how to say it any
mm-hmm,
different than it's not because I was any better than anybody else or any smarter than anybody else.
mm-hmm,
I surrendered. And
mm,
I think somewhere in that surrender is when God's grace, that
mm,
seems to be the opening, you
mm-hmm,
know? It's
mm-hmm.
like, so there's, yeah. One more thing.
Yeah,
Like you said,
please.
there's a
Yeah.
lot there.
Yeah.
So if
No, no.
I could go on and on, and I you know,
Yeah, and I don't think we're not looking for the right answer, as if
mhm,
there's one answer. Grace is
yeah,
such just a significant thing that I think the more we can talk about it, the more people will fit into that in whatever way works for their life as well. And we experience it like in so many different ways. So yeah, please,
well, I
feel
mean,
free.
even so, I joke about it with
Yeah.
my son. I remember we were having a conversation years ago about grace, and I said, "Well," and he was acting up. I forget we're on a podcast. Yeah, hopefully he won't watch this, but no, he was
I'll send it to
yeah,
him.
he was getting into some trouble, and he was staying at our house. And long story short, I said to him, "You know, grace," I said, "basically, you haven't earned, like right now, the way you're behaving,
Mm,
you know, you're staying in the house and, you know, I'm taking care of you. Basically, not because of anything you had to earn or prove or do, because I love you.
mm,
That's why, because you're my son
mhm,
and I love you." Well, and I'm a flawed human being and I'm capable of that kind of love just because I love you. You're my son. That's it, period. You know? And I think, imagine that infinite. That's the way I see it, you know,
mhm.
is that God loves us um, beyond even what we can imagine.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and we were talking before we started recording today, just how the pandemic has impacted us all, and for most of things, slowed us down in a way that's been really helpful. Where our value doesn't just come from our latest accomplishment, because during the pandemic there was lots of things we just couldn't accomplish and we couldn't do. And for me, that's an idea of grace as well. That my value, comes from something greater, God, than my latest accomplishment or how I did that day on and just yeah, it's really powerful.
It's a good
Yeah,
starting point,
yeah,
don't you think?
yeah,
Like if I can start my day knowing like I'm just loved,
yeah,
period.
yeah,
I'm okay, you know, period.
yeah.
That's a good start, no matter
That's
what I do
that's a
today,
powerful place to live
right?
in a beautiful way. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Danny, one of the things I love is we mentioned but not done, and we're never done. We're never. A guy named Craig Rochelle says, "If you ain't dead, you ain't done." And I love that. And
Yeah.
I think we're never done growing, especially when it comes to this spiritual life, our life. And I love the way that you're always from my observation experience, you're always on a path where you're trying to learn and grow What are you learning these days? What because you did, like your eyes popped, and I said, yeah, you've come a long way, or you've experienced grace, and you still are, you're not done. What's going on for you these days when you think about,
Yeah.
and I know you got a blog going on too, which I think is really cool, which my sense is it's a beautiful resource for others to be inspired, but it also is really helpful for you getting at your own heart and what is the essence of life and faith and most meaningful things for you as well.
Wow. Well, there's a lot there, I think. Yeah. Okay. So I guess the starting point of that, like I mentioned saying thank you when I first wake up. I've got a bunch of little routines that I do, Jamie, 7 days a week. And not, again, this isn't me preaching or telling anybody else they need to do it. It's what works for me. I just recognize, like, some days it takes a little effort just to get upright, Other days, and I know there's rarely a day goes by that I don't pack a lot of living into my days, But in order to do that, I have to fill up, So in the morning, I have my little routines. Now that, believe it or not, it includes a little bit of yoga. I never would have thought I would have, been someone who would have been doing yoga poses at 5 a.m., but that's me. But yeah, some prayer, meditation every morning, a little bit of reflection and writing. So onto the blog or that kind of thing. I don't even know if you'd call it a blog, only because blogs, for the most part, I notice they summarize things.
Okay.
Mine end up a chapter of a book, right? I love that. Even the improvisation, I guess, with writing, any kind of creative project never ends where I think it's going to, And for me, like my writing, that's what it is. It's creative expression. It's an opportunity to get things out of here onto paper. I find even, again, no matter how intelligent you might think we are, when the conversations are between our ears, there's disconnects. They don't always add up for me. Get things on paper, let it flow, and see where it goes. And so I think, is there any maybe wonderful little snippets in some of the things I write? I hope that my interpretation might inspire some other people. But I think take it a level deeper would be that just my ability to try to translate what's going on between my ears, or to share some of that inspiration with others, maybe gives other people say, like, I could do that, Him, he's not very smart, and look at that.
That's great.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's,
yeah.
I think
you can just do it. You don't have to, don't need a title. You don't need,
And I try to, I'm always trying to connect with people. I'm hoping that there's a connection there. I'd like to think of my writing as building bridges, and that's why, like, I write about things. I try to tie in, some of my passions. It's kind of funny, like people say, the Beatles and Jesus, how do you tie those two together? But the whole idea of creative expression, music, love, I think when you peel it all down, Jesus's message was about love. When you find the light within, share it with others.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but that works for me.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Love it. So with your writing, like, what would be an example of something that you've written about? Maybe even the impact or the response that you've gotten from people as you've done that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wrote something called Humor and Humility, and it was like a lot of real extremes, talking about the passing of my dad and some of the things that I dealt with following his death. But then speaking about the challenges of my long commute, long day at work, but then coming home from a long day, and we're in pandemic. All my grown children are home. My grandson's there. They're all waiting to see me. And, I can gauge my spiritual fitness by whether I'm stepping over the shoes or kicking them on my way in the door. But on this particular day, it just was one of those days. Everything was going wrong. I had a lot going on in my head. And I walked in, and my grandson said, "Oh, Grandpa, you look great." He goes, "Did anyone compliment you on your outfit at work?" It was just such a pure and awesome, and everything just kind of fell off me. I forgot even what I was upset about or whatever. Of course, the kids roasted me at the dinner table about my fancy plaid shirt or whatever. But I write about stuff like that because to me, that's the everyday spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
That's taking the words from a page and making it real, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Real life in those moments with where all of a sudden my heart's filled with gratitude again. And I forgot what I was feeling sorry for myself
Mm-hmm.
about. That little moments of humility that kind of happen that just right size us.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. And I think sometimes we can get caught up in the weeds maybe of what it says on the page
Yeah.
when it's right there. So
Mm.
I try to write about that in an everyday or in a real way, hoping that maybe some people that some of the stuff maybe a little more in depth,
Yeah.
or let's just say a Bible study, or might not have as much appeal, but they read that and say, hey, that's kind of cool. I can relate to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make
Absolutely. Yeah,
sense?
for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you mentioned the word connect, and I think that's something that, especially now, people are always looking for connection, right? Like that's there's a human need to connect with others. Some of us need to connect with more people than others. It is all good, but there's a need to connect with people. And especially now as we've come through this pandemic where there's been so much isolation and right. And so as you think about connecting with people, when you go to write, what I'm curious about is because I love that your encouragement of as people are listening or watching this, like that may not be their thing, but maybe there's something they're sitting on that they haven't done yet. They've been thinking about for a while and just afraid to kind of to go for it and just do it. So for you, like this process of in some ways disciplining yourself to write, but also I'm wondering about two things:
Hmm.
how you started, like how you overcame that fear that might have been there that could have prevented you,
Right.
questions. I don't know if these were in your head, these would be in my head. Oh, what am I going to possibly write about? What are people going to think? Who's going to actually read this thing? Like, what if I
Hmm.
spell some words wrong? Blah, blah, blah. So there's that overcoming that fear to even go for it, launch it, get it started. But then also the discipline to do it regularly, daily, as you are. And do you ever have days where something doesn't come, or yeah, what's that like? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, for sure.
Cool.
Yes to all those fears. I guess the one of the things I think I'm fortunate with is so many different interests as far as
Mm,
like different. It can be good and bad.
mhm,
So like if someone's just really good at something and they do that daily discipline like you're speaking of, that's not really me. I have to put an effort into some of those things.
mm,
But where it flows more is when I have multiple outlets. So some different types of creativity. So I created a space in the basement where I've got all my books. I got a whole wall of vinyl. I got several turntables. It's a love of mine. I have a wall that looks like this, and it's kind of a faux brick wall, but I started doing my own graffiti on it, and then cool messages, and then it's expanded, and it's like a whole wall. Again, it's another creative outlet. So the nice thing is, I don't feel like writing long stuff every day, but I do have a daily discipline with a group of guys called the Brotherhood,
mhm,
and we share a little bit of inspiration with each other. And I write something every day for that.
mm.
That's a daily discipline.
Okay.
But I pray and I meditate and I do my sort of my own little rituals first, and
Mhm,
then it seems to flow. And my prayer is kind of simple: help me to share something to be useful to you, God,
mm,
and to anyone who you
mhm,
know, needs to or wants to listen to what I have to say kind of thing to connect, right?
mm.
Um, but on a bigger picture, if I'm going to expand on that or really actually have an idea in my head that I want to write about, sometimes I just got to put it aside. I might paint, I might draw that
Okay.
day.
Yeah.
And James, I just tell you, so when the pandemic started, I was the only one working in our home because everybody was shut down.
Mm.
We were deemed essential. So they're all doing all these cool hobbies. Like, and I'd get home at night from work and the whole family, all my adult children and my wife, and they're like, oh, look, we've got the table set up. We're learning how to make baskets, or they're doing like all these cool things. And that's where the self-pity came in. I'm like, this sucks. But
They
so
better send your grandson to you at
yeah,
the door every
yeah, every
day.
day.
Every day.
Exactly.
Do that again. Do
Where's
that
the
again.
welcoming party? So, but what I did was I bought a little travel guitar, and at work, at lunch every day, I'd go down to the park and
Nice.
I started teaching myself. I didn't tell them. After about a month, I came home. I said, hey, I'm learning how to play guitar. They're like, come on. I said, I saw a video that said, everybody says you got to play half hour a day, but I saw a video guy says if you can give 5 minutes a day, and I was like, I can do 5 minutes.
Nice.
So that's 2.5 years ago,
Wow.
and I can play some songs, man.
That's cool.
It's something I enjoy with my grandson. It's not quite how I envisioned. I envisioned I would pick up my guitar and the family would gather around. Let's all sing with Dad. It hasn't worked out that way. They're all like, "Oh, Dad, whiskey in the jar again," and they all disappear. But it's become more of a solitary endeavor. But yeah, I'm like, yeah. Well, I remember when you were learning how to play the recorder in grade 9. I'm just getting even. But
That's
having
great.
multiple, I think, creative outlets is
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I love that. Someone once said that, whose job is it for you to be inspired? It's your job. And I hear that what you're saying is, you found your own way to do some things that let you be creative, and also then helps you be healthy and in a place where you can write and bless others through the work you're doing
Yeah,
there.
right on.
Awesome, man. Okay, well, we can't have this conversation and not talk about the Beatles. You mentioned the Beatles earlier, and I know, over our time, I've heard you talk about the Beatles many, many times over the years, and just the power of the messaging there. Even the connection in with faith, God, with a Christian faith. Like, there's just so much there, and I love the depth that you've worked at that in some ways and researched that. Yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more from you today about that part of your life.
Yeah, well, there's a true question of how much time you got, right? It's interesting. It's on so many levels. So first, to answer your first question on the Beatles, for me anyway, it's hard to imagine because we've never known a life without the Beatles, Beatles music. It's over 50 years ago since they stopped playing.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing, what I guess you're talking about connecting it with Christianity or connecting it with spirituality. The Beatles had a platform that was kind of almost unprecedented, and that's my phone buzzing over there. My apologies.
That's all right.
Okay, bring it back. We're going to edit this part out. The Beatles had a platform. They were given an opportunity. The whole world was listening, and they could have done so many things with that platform, but they chose love. My biggest thing too is this. I get people say to me, "Oh, how do you compare, different spiritual leaders, say, with the Beatles?" You're right. They did drugs. They did, blah blah blah. They had failed marriages. They're 4 regular guys, working class guys who made music. I don't put them on a pedestal. It's not like looking at them as, demigods or something. It's what they did with their platform was create this music that we're still listening to today, that have inspired people, that when 400 million people were watching the first ever satellite broadcast that went out in 1967, they wrote a song called All You Need Is Love. To me, if what Jesus suggested we do was, like I said earlier, find that love within you, find that light within you, and share it with the world, despite your flaws, despite your imperfection. I mean, the Bible's filled with flawed characters, wayward souls who carried a heck of a message. I mean, Paul, we'd probably start there. Some pretty awesome wisdom writing from, thousands of years ago that still stands today. And he was certainly no saint at parts of his life. Right?
Yeah,
and I guess that's my whole point is, like, despite our humanness, despite our imperfection, if we're able to kind of carry a message of love, express the idea of love. I heard somebody say, you would never listen to Beatles music and then want to go out and get in a fight.
Nice,
Maybe.
nice.
I want to say one other quick thing about that, though. Not all their songs are about love.
Sure. Yeah.
There's lots that weren't. But this is kind of my thinking on it, I guess, to sum it all up. Their imperfections, their music, which was diverse, the essence of what it was that we kind of think of is peace and love. That's, to me, it's the whole is greater than, the sum of the parts, I guess. The whole idea, love, being the ultimate power in the universe, if God is love, it comes through. That's what rises to the surface. The essence of the message is love, which to me, again, and I would say this about Jesus's teachings, Jamie, when I revisited Jesus's teachings, it's not, he He spoke one language. He didn't write it down. It was translated in other languages. Thousands of years later, different agendas. And in the end, what do we have? A message of love.
Mm.
What the way the words were lined up, or
Yeah.
how, it's kind of
Yeah.
amazing. Doesn't, to
Yeah.
me anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense, but
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's where the power is that in the essence of love kind of comes through.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. One of these, I love the way that you have shared the Beatles with me over the years. Is it's also a unique way to get at that message of God's love. And Jesus was all about trying to get that message out. Spent some of his life and teachings encouraging us to do that as well. So yeah.
Well, and the blog I wrote about Jesus and the Beatles, you're saying about,
Yeah.
sharing with people. One person I shared it to, it meant a lot to me. I wanted their feedback and I never heard anything. So I probed, which I should know better. Anyway, and the person replied to me, "Oh, it was really good." And I said, "Oh, you read it all?" 50% of it. I was like, the best fit with the first half or second half, because I think it got better.
Yeah.
But the point was, I have to remember, maybe that wasn't for them.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
just the other day, I had a guy who, as soon as I started speaking about Jesus, and I think this is the most important point for me personally, as soon as I started speaking about Jesus to him, he shut down. I don't want to hear about it. He goes, "I already did that stuff as a kid, and it didn't work." He used three things: self-righteous, hypocritical, judgmental. That's harsh, right? But at the same time, I said to him, "Hey, I can appreciate that. But to me, if it's all about reflecting on ourselves and having it, would you be willing to revisit it from a different angle? Look at it from a different perspective?" So I shared that article I had wrote about that, which kind of, I feel, boiled down Jesus's teachings, but connected it with
Yeah.
music and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. He just sent me a text the other day, said, "I absolutely enjoyed this." He put in parenthesis one of the quotes from it, and he said, "I'd like to know more."
Wow.
To me, I said to my wife, if nothing else, if that's all I accomplished by writing that, man, there's a connection right there. There's a guy who's willing to revisit a story that he thought he had already knew, or that he'd already given up on.
Yeah.
And that is my story. Like, that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
So, now I've got this connection, two guys who can have a real conversation, about a story we thought we knew that we're able to revisit.
So cool. So cool.
That's what lights me up,
So
man.
cool. No, I can tell. And there's connection all over that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, my man. Well, let's end with a little good news podcast rapid fire here.
Okay.
So what's the best thing going on in your home, in your family?
Lots of growth. I have such a big family, and I know we're doing rapid fire. Otherwise, I'll be here for a while. So I have 5 kids and a grandson, and there's always so much going on. What's the best thing? A lot of growing, a lot of healing, and a lot of to thine own self be true happening with every member in my family. They're all, finding their own way, walking their own path, and and we're all still pretty tight.
Yeah.
Just last night, Taylor came back from out west. Chelsea and River came over.
Yeah.
The next thing, we're down in the basement. He's playing harmonica. I'm
You were playing the guitar. Oh, it's coming together.
Right? Yeah, and it was absolutely brutal. We'll post a video of it, maybe with no sound.
That's great. That's great. What about your neighborhood, your community? What's the best thing going on there?
I would say I really love, I guess, neighborhood community. My morning group, which is a chat group.
Yeah.
I love that because there's, mostly guys younger than me. So not sharing any wisdom, just sharing experience, but just real connection. Every morning, my day starts with a whole bunch of guys sharing in a very real way, connecting.
Yeah.
So for me personally,
That's awesome.
Again, it's hard to feel sorry for yourself with a heart full of gratitude to start the day, right?
Right on, eh? And that's online too. That's online.
Yeah.
And that's cool that we can do that these days.
Yeah.
Awesome. Best thing going on in our world.
I think there is a movement happening, an awareness movement, more and more people taking the time to try to be present, to be mindful. I think it's easy to flick on the news and be depressed within a few minutes, There's a lot of crappy stuff going on in the world. So I think it's important that there seems to be a movement of people that are young people, a lot more the idea of inclusion, diversity, radical inclusivity, man. More and more, the next generation coming through are saying like, we're going to change some things. And I think as long as they're being guided by love, we're on the right track. And I do see plenty of that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, thanks so much, man. Love to close with a prayer and give thanks for this time, and pray for you, your family, pray for all of us who are entering in and enjoying this conversation today. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much
buddy.
for having me,
Oh,
James.
for sure, man. For sure. Let's pray. Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, thank you for the depth of conversation today, and I have no doubt that many of us will be inspired and encouraged by what we've heard today. That we can find ways to be creative. We can you can give us discipline to write and learn how to play music and just do life in a way that we continue to grow. So thank you for all of that, for grace, for the power of grace. That someone today, as they're hearing this, watching this, listening to this, that maybe they need a little bit more grace, and somehow today they would have felt that and experienced that and received that today. Thank you for love. Love is at the heart of Jesus' message and life, and you invite us to do our very best to love others. So may we be inspired to live into that together. Thanks again for this time and for the way you continue to be at work in our lives, through our lives, and in this world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome.
I just thought of something too. When you asked about talking about wayward or not the finished product, you did a morning devotional just a couple of weeks ago about that and talking about where we get our energy. And that's exactly what you shared. I love that, talking about that our inner energy might be limited, but that source is limitless.
Right on.
Right?
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
awesome.
I wish I remembered that during the thing.
Well, it was perfect. It's a great way to end.
Can we edit that in?
Yeah, we just did.
All right.
We just did. All right, buddy.
Awesome.
Oh,
Thank
thanks,
you, man.
Thanks,
for having
Danny.
me.
And thanks you, everyone, for being a part of the Good News Podcast family, being a part of this conversation. God bless you and be with your friends. Thanks so much. Wow. I mean, I love the energy that Danny brings. And honestly, friends, like what you see, what you heard, what you felt there is what you got in this guy. He's an amazing individual. I'm glad to call him a friend, and I'm glad you got to experience some of Danny's thoughts and positivity and just who he is as well today. I love the conversation around grace, because so often we toss out the word grace, but not really delve into what it actually means. And I love the fact that we kind of went there, just had to wrestle that down a little more. What does that actually mean to think about this idea of grace? And you could just catch it. I'm sure that Danny's experienced that in his life and continues to in such a beautiful way. I love that. Like, here's Danny, and he's never done growing. He's helping others grow these days, but he's also growing himself as he does that in these writings and in this work that he's doing with others. So that was really cool to me as well. It's funny how that works, that as we help others grow, we grow ourselves in the process and along the way. And you gotta love his love for the Beatles, and certainly some amazing messages there. That idea of love being central to a good life, a blessed life itself, God even. And so, yeah, just love that Danny helped us take a little trip on that train as well. So friends, hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to catch Danny's got some great resources out. You can go to his website. It's livingininspiration.com, livingininspiration.com. Check it out. I think you'll love some of the stuff that is there, because Danny's a great guy and putting out some awesome stuff. Friends, thanks again for being a part of the conversation today. May God bless you and be with you. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Good News with Jamie Holtum. Really grateful for you, and can't wait to see you again. Thanks so much.